This is Latino Gamer, bringing you my Season 1 recap and finale. I want to give a big thanks to anyone who has actually watched all 12 of my video reviews thus far. I would love to hear any feedback you may have regarding my series. I started these reviews at the end of 2008 thanks to some encouragement from a close friend of mine. I was unsure at the time whether this would turn into a regular hobby, but once I got those first few videos out there, I realized how much I was enjoying it. If any of you have been considering making video reviews of your own, I'd like to encourage you to go ahead and give it a try. Don't expect your first video to be a masterpiece. You learn a lot of little tricks as you go ahead and make more videos. I'd like to take another look at the 14 games I've reviewed so far and discuss some recurring themes. Nintendo has done an excellent job of taking care of their mascot. Almost every core Mario game stands out as one of the defining games of its console. When it came time to bring him to the Nintendo 64, Nintendo delivered an excellent 3D platformer. Unfortunately, not all great platforming heroes have had the same treatment. Spyro and Sonic are only two of many formerly popular platform heroes. The original Spyro the Dragon by Insomniac Games for the Sony PlayStation 1 remains my personal favorite platformer of all time. While some would say Sonic should never have been brought to 3D, remember that Sonic Adventure for the Sega Dreamcast was always a highly acclaimed game, proof that Sonic can work in 3D. Spyro's partner in crime, Crash Bandicoot, was considered the de facto Sony mascot in his prime. His peak was arguably with Crash Bandicoot 2 for the PlayStation. Sadly, once Insomniac Games and Naughty Dog were done using their respective characters for a successful trilogy, they handed them off to other developers. The Sony PlayStation 2 became home to Crash and Spyro's spiritual successors, Jak and Daxter by Naughty Dog and Ratchet & Clank by Insomniac, as well as Sly Cooper by Sucker Punch. Jak, Ratchet, and Sly all had their own trilogy on the PS2 and even some spin-offs. Sega will certainly continue to make Sonic games, but his dwindling popularity will inevitably bring about his end if Sonic Team doesn't shape up. Of these 6 franchises, it appears the only one who will continue to challenge Mario's dominance of the 3D platforming genre is Ratchet & Clank. Kudos, Insomniac. Fighting games teach young children that most problems can be solved with violence. But that's not the only good thing about them. The majority of games revolve around the central character, most often an adult white man. While not every game developer is guilty of this, developers of fighting games in particular pretty much have to include a more diverse cast due to the nature of their games. Other games are a lot more about the levels without a lot of focus on the character. Fighting games are inherently all about the characters with less focus on the locations. Therefore, much of the appeal to fighting games lies in the diversity of the roster. This doesn't mean racial diversity as much as diversity of fighting styles, but of course the easiest way to create believable characters, each with their own different fighting style, is to make them of different nationalities and apply the appropriate stereotypes. The popularity Street Fighter II brought to fighting games encouraged diversifying video game casts. While this was a positive start, it often manifests in tokenization and perpetuation of stereotypes. Balrog, Eddie Gordo, Zack, and Jax are each the lone black character in an otherwise white and Asian roster. And even though wrestlers can be a fun addition to fighting games, I can't help but feel something's amiss when I see that an article entitled Top 10 Mexicans of Video Games consists almost entirely of luchadores. While it makes perfect sense to have Japanese heroes given where video games come from, I'd love to see a lot more brown and black protagonists in games. And by that, I mean games with heroic protagonists, not criminal simulations. In fact, I'm telling you right now, if I ever manage to make it as a game designer, one of my goals will be to encourage more minority protagonists in games. At the end of the day, the average white person has more disposable income and is therefore more likely to purchase a new game. After all, there's a reason I've mostly reviewed last generation games as much as I would love to review PS3 or 360 games. But now, what genre is the most popular among men of color? That's right, fighting games. The ones with all the token blacks and Mexican wrestlers. Give us something, game developers. We're big fans. In fact, some of us like games so much, we review 14 games and put them up on YouTube. Fan service. Nintendo is guilty of it, Capcom is guilty of it, Square Enix is guilty of it, and Team Ninja dedicated 2 whole games to nothing but fan service. Some will tell you it's the only reason the Tomb Raider series still exists. Historically, men have always been the primary consumers of video games, and even with everything the Wii and DS have done to try to change that, men still buy games a lot more than women do. We are easily amused by pretty colors, we love to pretend we're killing things, and we like the save the princess archetype because we would like to be someone's hero. After all, you go to video games to act out what you can't achieve in real life. In some ways, the same principles from my last argument apply here. When you have one central character, it will most often be a man, even when he's not human. That's the only reason Metroid's ending had any shock value. But really though, surprise, the protagonist is a woman wasn't a new idea even then. I remember coming across the same ending in an old Spanish folktale. However, women in games most often play the damsel in distress role, unless it's a fighting game. Again, fighters prove to be the best genre for the underrepresented. Chun-Li's position as a world warrior essentially created the female fighter archetype, and newer fighting games now have ever-expanding lists of female combatants. After all, while a white man as your central character may seem normal, the longer your roster list becomes, the more glaring it would be if your list didn't include women or people of color. Just like in other forms of media, the woman protagonist is pretty common nowadays. Even outside of fighting games, some franchises at least eventually include a heroine. Now, to be fair, it's not like there's never any fan service for women. Video games do have their fair share of muscular shirtless men. The question we're left with is whether it's wrong to sell games with women on the cover art. Now, there's nothing wrong with fantasy in and of itself. I play video games because I know I'll never ride an actual dragon or save my friends from a giant monster. Fantasy has its place, but keep it in perspective. Don't expect real people to look like they do in video games. The problem with character models, such as those in the Dead or Alive series, is that they over-sexualize women the same way romance novels over-romanticize men. Neither is healthy, and those aren't expectations people should have. In the end, I think it's really a shame that some people will look at Dead or Alive 2 or Final Fantasy X-2 and just see something shallow, because as I've said before, they both implement outstanding combat systems that anyone who enjoys games can enjoy. Is this still wrong? I don't think it's my place to say. I invite everyone with an opinion on the matter, especially female gamers, to write or post a video response. I'd love to hear your opinions on race or gender in video games. No More Heroes is part of an interesting trend in the development of third-party games for the Wii console. Nintendo has been doing all they can to keep the image of their precious Wii as spotless and kid-friendly as possible. This is a trend we can trace all the way back to the release of Mortal Kombat on the 16-bit consoles when the Super Nintendo version was censored to remove the blood which was visible in the Sega Genesis version. Politically speaking, this has usually been a good move on Nintendo's part, as it makes it much more difficult for Nintendo to be accused of corrupting young children, while Sony and Microsoft take all the heat from anti-gamer groups. On the other hand, the children who began with an NES or Super NES and have been following Nintendo loyally for 4 or 5 generations are now adults and tend to want something more than another Mario or Zelda game. A natural balance seems to have occurred in that, while Nintendo continues to cater to the younger gamers, third parties are now picking up the slack and developing the quality adult games for the motion control console. No More Heroes is my personal favorite game on this system. Ubisoft, Capcom, and Sega have published several adult games on the console, while Nintendo themselves finally announced upcoming core titles at E3. It may be more difficult to find the quality games on the Wii, but they're there. So now, what can you expect from me next season? My most popular video this season has been the Mega Man Anniversary Collection. It's no secret that I love compilations because you get so much for your money. You can expect me to take a look at some more compilations by Capcom, Sega, and others as I go on, including some viewer requests. So far, people have requested the Sonic Mega Collection Plus and the Mega Man X Collection, as well as Metal Gear Solid 3 and the Ratchet & Clank series. Feel free to send in any other requests, and if I have the game or can get my hands on it, I'll make a review for it. In contrast to my lengthy reviews, I'm also planning on starting my video game snapshots, short reviews of classic games. On the flip side, I would really like to get a new console, so let's hope my financial situation improves. There should be some other surprises in store as well. I want to give a big thanks to my friends, YouTube subscribers, and the G1s at Screw Attack. I hope you will all continue to support my show. Once again, thank you all for listening, and happy gaming.